children. I'm the founder of True Beauty Discovery, a nonprofit whose mission is to champion the beauty of individuality, identify and nurture inclusive beauty ideals as we engage anyone who connects or who identifies as a woman, a girl, or femme. Our guest today is Aija Mayrock. Aija is amazing, right? So let me tell you a little bit about her. She's a best-selling author, she is a poet, and she's a performer. She started writing her first book, The Survival Guide to Bullying, when she was 16 years old after having been bullied for quite a long time. She self-published the book, and then Scholastic picked it up, and it's been published all around the world. She's spoken to over 4 million people nationwide on bullying and mental health. She joined the ABC and Disney Channel Choose Kindness campaign alongside Haley Steinfeld and Alyssa Cara. She was named one of the Today Show's Heroes of the Year for 2018. She's been part of the movement to register young people to vote, joining forces with Do Something. Speaking to her will be something that will mean very much to me because I was bullied when I was a kid, and it was just terrible. And I think that a lot of individuals have been bullied, are bullied. If you have a kid, it's horrible. So that being said, I'd like to introduce you to Aija to come on board. Aija?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Holly, for having me and for those kind words. I am so excited to be here today and to be talking with you. As Holly mentioned, my name is Aija Mayrock. I'm a poet and an author and a performer. And I'm going to kind of take you back to the beginning of my story. So my story begins when I was 8 years old and I began getting bullied. I used to have a lisp and a stutter, and the bullying began with the way I spoke. And then because I didn't speak up for myself, because I was bullied for the way I spoke, it only continued and got worse and worse as I got older. And it eventually came to the point where I would come to school at 8 years old and my classmates would tell me to kill myself. They would tell me my life wasn't worth anything. And it became really, really challenging on my mental health, and something that I didn't really ask for help on. So this went on from the time I was 8 until I was around 13. My family moved to California, where I'm originally from New York. And I had 1 year that was normal and everything was okay. And then in my first year of high school, a girl I had never met who attended my old school dressed up as me for Halloween, posted a sign around her neck with my name on it and posted it online. And suddenly I was faced with cyberbullying and hate comments at a level I had never seen before. I was a regular student. I didn't have a social media following. I didn't want that at the time. And out of nowhere, I was dealing with mob mentality for the first time in my life. And so then that bullying kind of continued, even though I had moved schools online. And for the first time in my life, I decided to start kind of advocating for myself more than I had before, because I did kind of give up on myself pretty early because I was bullied for the way I spoke. And so speaking up seemed very daunting and very scary. So I started opening up to my mom about what I had gone through and began realizing how much it had affected my mental health and the way I saw myself. Around that same time, I saw a lot of news stories about young people who had taken their life because of bullying. And I was so angry and I wanted to do something about it because I knew that pain and I knew that hopelessness. And I also knew that you could get through it and that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And so I began writing, because for me, writing was always the way I was able to really express myself and really connect with my voice. And so I began, and I wrote a script about bullying. And that script was made into a short film that won an international film festival when I was 15. And then I continued writing because I wanted to find a way to reach people at an even larger international level. And I began writing my first book, which is called The Survival Guide to Bullying. And I didn't know anyone in the industry, and so I self-published it. And then 1 month after I self-published it, Scholastic acquired it, and they published it. And I was 19 at the time, and it came out and it became a bestseller, and I started speaking and performing poetry all over the US. So now I'm going to take a quick pause, and I'm going to share with you a part of a larger poem that I've performed all over. I've performed it in schools and communities and at places like Madison Square Garden and the Microsoft Theater. And it tells a bit about my story that I've already shared with you through words, but in poetry form. So here we go. I'm going to tell you a story about the power of words, about your own voice and being heard, the power to heal, the power to hurt. On Halloween of my freshman year, a girl I had never met who attended my old school dressed up as me as her costume. And suddenly it was like someone pressed resume. I was all consumed by cyberbullying, harassment, and my past. You see, I'd spent 8 years being bullied. Crowds would amass to telecast hate, try to obliterate their very own classmate. And so when this happened, I sunk into my chair, defeated, with this blank stare in my eye, thinking, this is it. I can't keep trying to get by. A few weeks later, my life would change. It was a regular day, nothing strange, till I read the news about a boy. 16 years old, he couldn't hold on any longer, couldn't be any stronger. It said, suicide due to bullying. And something in me said, Aija, you cannot wait any longer. You see, I know what it's like to lose your fight, and I know what it's like to take back your life. But how could I let kids struggle every day without showing them that it's gonna be okay? I couldn't find the answer. How do you help kids around the world? What is the answer? Do I have a voice? I didn't know. Do I have the power? I won't let go. But I'm not gonna lie, I was hesitant from head to toe. And then my mom said to me, Aija, you gotta be brave. Tell your story. If not you, who will tell the story of the millions of kids bullied every single year? And suddenly it all became clear, and she said to me, who do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? What do you believe? I want to be who I needed when I was younger. I want to achieve more than I ever thought was possible. I believe in standing up, standing up. I'm not backing up, easing up, or shutting up. I'm going to make a change. So I put pen to paper, rearranged the thoughts that poured from my brain, and created a book that goes by the name, The Survival Guide to Bullying. The book Aija needed when she was 10, 12, 15. It just came a few years late, but hopefully it would show everyone else how to communicate, love your weight, your sexual orientation, or your growth rate. Because it doesn't matter what anyone says to you, whether you are gay, straight, trans, lost, found, alone, sad, scared, or different. We are all different, unfinished, sufficient. We all fight our own battles each day. We all must be accepting of our wounds that don't always fade away. So I'll leave you with this and say, I promised myself that I would take a stand, try to save others by holding out my hand, but I cannot fix this problem on my own. I need people like you to get up, hold your head high, raise your hand and say, I will not let another kid feel like someone else's prey. Whether you are the bully, the bullied, or the bystander, today is a new day. Stand up, don't back down, and be brave. So that is a part of this longer poem that I like to share with people because I think that it introduces you to my story and it introduces you to a lot of my work and my writing in a bigger scale. So I hope that you enjoyed that piece. So I want to go back a little bit now. I want to start with the definition of bullying because I think that a lot of people are unclear about what it really means to be bullied and why it's such a big problem. I don't know if any of you can relate, but when I was younger, I remember being told that bullying is just a natural part of growing up. It's kids being kids. And I couldn't understand why, if it was a normal part of growing up and it was kids being kids, why it was such a big problem and why so many people were so negatively affected with their mental health and why people ultimately resorted to depression, to self-harm, and to suicide. And the more that I reflected on my experience and the more that I read about the history of what makes bullying so dangerous and what the definition of bullying is, I learned about why it has become such an enormous issue. So I'm going to break it down. So there's 4 kinds of bullying. There is verbal bullying, which is teasing or taunting someone. There's physical bullying, which is any type of, pushing someone, hitting them, pinching them, shoving them. There's social bullying, which is a little bit harder to see, and that is spreading rumors about someone, isolating someone. An example I like to give, and this happened to me a lot, is I would sit down at the lunch table and everyone would get up and move and sit down at another table, and they would keep doing this until I was always the only one left alone at the lunch table. So it's stuff like that is not necessarily words or physical actions against you physically, but things that are a lot more invisible and a lot harder to really detect or to see. And then there is cyberbullying, which is any type of bullying that happens online or on your phone. But the one thing that makes bullying so different from kids being kids is that it is repetitive. It doesn't just happen once or twice, but it happens 3, 4, 5 times, and it's going to continue. It's the type of thing where you go to school every day or you go on social media every day, and it's nonstop. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Another reason why it's super dangerous is because with cyberbullying, and I think that is the most dangerous kind of bullying and the most common type of bullying, especially now with the pandemic. With cyberbullying, it can be 24/7. It used to be people went to school, maybe they were bullied, but they got to go home and escape it. But now it follows you everywhere. It's 24/7. It's often anonymous, and it can feel like the entire world is against you because of that. So what do we do about it? Well, there's good news. The good news is that 50% of the time, if someone stands up when someone else is being bullied, if someone speaks up for them, that person will never be bullied again. So 50% of the time, anyone that decides to be an upstander, to say something, anything, can totally change someone's life forever just by speaking up. So this bystander, upstander effect is a real thing, and it's really important because I understand how terrifying it can be to see bullying happen and to want to say something but not know how to because it's scary. You don't want to become the target yourself. But that change of going from a bystander to an upstander is so crucial, and it really is what can change someone's life forever and also the culture of bullying forever. So I talk about this, and oftentimes people will say to me, well, what if I'm too afraid? What if I am just really scared that I'm going to get bullied myself? And I get that because I have been in that situation too. So what I say is, in the case that you can't speak up, there are 2 things you can do. One, you can find what I call in my first book the wingwoman or wingman, but essentially someone that you can find, a friend, a peer, a classmate that can help you stand up together, because there is power in numbers. So having that person or having a few people help you stand up, or learning by their example if they feel more comfortable, that can be really amazing, really important. The other thing to do is, if this is happening at school, but even if it's happening online, it's really important that you tell an adult, a teacher, principal, a guidance counselor, someone within your school or within your life, a parent, a family member, because telling someone and telling them about what is going on, at least that person knows, and at least they can decide, or help you decide what the next step is, who to go to, what to do about it. So that's really important. And oftentimes, if someone is too afraid to do it themselves, going to that adult or going to that grown-up can be really, really useful, and a really great kind of step in the right direction if you can't do it in that moment. So a lot of times people say, okay, well, I told them what's going on, they don't really listen, or they're not doing anything about it, what to do. So because cyberbullying is the most common kind of bullying these days, especially with the pandemic, as I mentioned, you got to take screenshots of everything. And you also want to use the tools to protect yourself personally if you're being cyberbullied, the block and report tools on any platform that you're on. I also suggest that people make sure that, if they are being bullied or if they're afraid of being bullied, to make sure that their privacy settings are benefiting them in the best way that they can. So have a private account, or just know that if you're not going to have a private account, what can happen, and that you can make those changes at any point in time if issues arise. But those block and report settings are really important, and taking screenshots of any cyberbullying that happens is super crucial, whether it happens to you or to a friend or someone in your school or someone you know, because you can use those screenshots to show to someone in your life, an adult preferably, so that they know what's going on and they can see it. And sometimes I think having that evidence is a lot easier to figure out a plan of what to do versus just communicating it verbally. Sometimes people have an easier time when they can see it, like on paper or as a screenshot. So now moving on to what to do if you yourself are bullied. So this is something I spent a lot of time working on when I was writing my book, because I wanted to find a way to empower people that were bullied, but also make it feel like it wasn't this enormous thing that they had to conquer on their own, because it's very overwhelming and it can be really scary. So the thing that I created in my first book, The Survival Guide to Bullying, is creating a top 5 list of the adults in your life that you trust. I just realized my hand is doing some weird things because of this background, but top 5 list of adults in your life that you trust. And those people can be a parent, guardian, family member, neighbor, principal, guidance counselor, favorite teacher, anyone, preferably an adult. And you want to go to them and you want to ask for help. Now, there's a few ways you can approach it. I totally get that sometimes having that sit down, serious conversation can be really, really scary and overwhelming. And I personally was not good at that. So another thing, my voice. Another thing that you can do is find a creative way of expressing yourself, whether it be through writing a letter, drawing a picture, writing a poem, writing a song, creating a skit, sending a text message. Like, there are so many ways that you can utilize creative outlets to express yourself, to talk about these things that are really scary and overwhelming, and communicate them to an adult in your life. And I list tons of creative ways in my book. And so I really encourage people to create that top 5 list and to keep it with you, regardless of if you're being bullied right now or it might happen in the future, because it's just great to have that list, to be able to look at it and to know that you have a game plan right then and there if anything is to happen. The other thing I want to touch on before I share another poem is bullying is a cycle. It is a really vicious cycle. And the cycle is like this. Very often the person that is bullied can also become the bully and is also the bystander. So anyone that has been bullied usually has also bullied someone and has seen it happen. And so it's continuous. And that's why it's so hard to stop bullying, because it is this cycle. And I like to share this because I want people to really hear that it is a cycle that all of us contribute to. And if we know that, then we also know that we can stand up and change the cycle at any given point. So to kind of break that down, if you yourself are the bully, obviously you can change it by being very conscious of the words you use, of your actions, and to really think about, okay, if I was having the worst day ever and someone said this to me or did this to me, how would that make me feel? And I know that can be objective. Different people can feel differently about that statement. But something I really like to talk to people about is that you have no idea what someone else is going through. You have no idea what it is like to walk in their shoes. And I think a lot of people that saw me when I was bullied, they thought everything was great. They thought that I was just a regular kid, but I was struggling so much, but I smiled through it and I faked it, and people I'm sure, believed it. And so I think it's really, really important that if it is your words or your behavior that you might feel like, oh, I don't know, maybe I said something that could hurt someone, to just think about it in the way that what would it feel like if I was having the worst day, if everything was going wrong and someone said this or someone did this, how would that make me feel? So that's on the side of the bully. On the side of the bystander, we talked about, being an upstander, deciding to speak up, deciding to say something, or having a wing woman or wingman, or going and telling an adult. And then on the side of the person being bullied, I know how overwhelming it can be to ask for help or to report what's going on. But I really encourage people to try their best to do that. Number one, for your own mental health and well-being. But also number two, because you can protect or help the other people coming up, whether it's in your grade or younger people or even older people, from experiencing what you're going through by making this culture of bullying known to the adults in your life, to the school, to social media websites, to all of it. So that reporting system, whether it's online using the report and block tools or going to an adult in your school or a parent, it's super, super important, because all of that together continues to change the cycle of bullying so that it is not as prevalent as it is right now and less people are affected. So I just spewed a lot at you. We're gonna take a little pause and I'm gonna do another poem performance for all of you. I hope you enjoy it. This one is called Dear Me, and it's more about mental health. It's not necessarily about bullying, but it's also about what happens when you bully yourself. So I wrote this piece about 2 years ago, and I wanted to talk about how important it is to be kind to yourself and also not bully yourself, because that's a whole nother issue. All right, so here we go. Dear me, I used to beat you up because I believed that if I was the meanest I could be to me, no one else could hurt me. I called that strength, but really it was fear. I couldn't stop hearing the words my bullies used to call me. I couldn't stop hearing them because I believed them. And so I took on that role, the biggest bully I could be, but to myself. I didn't realize I hold the key to that level of cruelty. The way I speak to myself grows like a weed or a rose from the soil made of how I feel about myself. When I looked in the mirror, I used to wince, but now I wink. I would tell myself I love myself so much that I didn't need to eat that meal. It's called discipline, another word for looking in the mirror and seeing a girl that was never thin enough, that didn't deserve dessert. Insert inspirational phrase about discipline and BS ways to sculpt a body that's been sculpted enough. Dear me, you are enough. You have always been enough. Dear everyone, when you speak to yourself, do you talk to yourself as if you are a friend or a bully? Because when you speak to yourself as the bully, you are teaching yourself to accept cruelty. That cruelty is good and safe, that your safe place is one of pain. Be gentle with your heart. Be gentle with your body. Nothing in life is guaranteed except the guarantee that the longest relationship you will ever have is with yourself. So this next piece, I also wrote about mental health, and this one is about vulnerability. I'm going to read it from my book, Dear Girl, which is my newest book. It came out in September, and it is my first book of poetry, and it's all about a journey from girlhood to young womanhood told through poetry. So this one is called Wounds Like Crown Jewels, and it's about wearing your wounds like they are crown jewels and being proud and stepping into your vulnerability. Growing up, the world taught me that vulnerability should be a secret. I grew up believing that the hero of a story never showed signs of weakness. I disguised my demons so there would be no sign of struggle. My vulnerability is not my weakness. It is my superpower. I wear it like a cape and watch mouths gape at the sight of a warrior wearing wounds like crown jewels. My vulnerability is more powerful than wielding a sword or a shield. No one teaches us that resilience rises like a wildfire from pain. The battles you fight do not take away from who you are. Dare to teach the world that weakness doesn't exist. Weakness is just a seed that no one sees sprouting into genius. Own your story like you wrote it by yourself. You are the hero. The hero is imperfect. Wear those wounds like crown jewels.
That was just beautiful. Those
Thank you.
poems are, I'm such a weeper, but I was bullied when I was a kid, and it's so hard. And when you talked about talking to yourself in that way, it's like you internalize that. You internalize, like for me, they used to say, how ugly I was or how weird I was or whatever. And
Yeah.
you internalize all that stuff, and it's just,
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry.
No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think, no matter the years between when someone is bullied and when they share their story, it's very painful still. And I really believe that bullying doesn't leave you. I think you can relate that it stays with you your whole life, the words that people tell you.
This is from Sasha, and this is the question. Where I grew up, bullying was much more covert and subtle. Things like side eye, non inclusion, or falling silent when someone walks up to your group, but was equally as hurtful. Any advice for people who aren't even aware they're bullying those around them because it doesn't look like the bullying they show in movies or TV?
That's a great question, Sasha. Yeah, so that's what we would call social bullying. It's those little things that doesn't look like bullying and is a lot harder to report or to even recognize within your own life if you're experiencing it or if you're doing it. I would say the biggest thing is before you do those things, think about why you behave that way when someone walks up to the group, and how it would feel if you were in that situation. And I know that's a really cliche way of thinking about it, but I really think that putting yourself in that place and feeling how it would feel to you, and especially going back to what I said about if it was your worst day, if everything was going wrong, if you were feeling terrible about yourself, how would that feel to you? That one little thing that might not seem like a big deal, but could really be putting someone over the edge. And then the other thing I always like to say is like, kindness is so easy. It's free, doesn't take much time. And just when you go around the world, even if, you're dealing with like popularity and clicks and stuff like that in school or online, like just decide to be that person that is going to say the nice thing or going to be more welcoming. And even if that makes you not cool or whatever it is, again, you could really be radically changing someone's life for the better by being that one person. I remember to this day the people that were nice to me and the people that did, say something or do something when everything was going bad. And those are the people I will never forget. And they've changed my life. So that's what I would say to answer your question. I hope that answered it.
Okay, here's one from Anonymous. Most people don't want to be considered the bad guy. So how do we talk to our friends about them bullying without making them defensive or cornered?
This is a great question, Anonymous. Thank you for asking. So the reason why I really like to talk about the cycle of bullying is for this exact reason, is I have a ton of empathy for the person that is bullying. Oftentimes they're going through something in their life that is really, really tough. And their behavior is as a result of either them being bullied themselves or something going on in their life. And a lot of times people don't even know that they're behavior is bullying. So it's really important to recognize that we're all part of this cycle, and the person bullied can also be the bully, as I mentioned before. So number one, what I would say is don't do confrontations in a group. You can stand up for someone in a group for sure, but if you're going to talk to someone about their behavior, you can do it in a group if you feel that that's going to work, but I think it works better when it's one-on-one. And when you're in that one-on-one conversation, I would encourage you to say something like, what you said to Jane the other day. Sorry, my voice keeps cracking. What you said to Jane the other day wasn't super nice, and I think that there are other ways that you can say something, or the other ways that you can talk to her. What made you say that? Or, is everything going okay in your life? So I think there are a few ways to approach it. You can either directly approach the situation and what was said, and maybe provide ideas for other things that could have been said, or explain why that could be hurtful. On the other side of things, you can ask them about their life and what's going on, because again, a lot of times it's something that's going on in their life. So I think both are solid options, and anything else you think of. But again, I like to go back to, what would you want to be said to you if you were the one being confronted about something you said? And coming from that place of empathy and understanding, and coming from the heart, I think, is a really good way to approach these conversations, and to not embarrass them or attack them, because again, we're all part of this cycle, and a lot of times someone is going through something on their end, which doesn't excuse the behavior at all, but might be helpful in decoding the situation.
Here's another one. Hang on one second. This is anonymous. In my experience, the most effective way to end bullying is by changing how the other students see bullying, as opposed to going to an adult to handle the situation. If you do normalize bullying by casually and verbally looking down on bullying, that becomes the norm. An example, saying something along the lines of, "Ew, why was she bullying her? That's so annoying." No one wants to be behind on the times. What are your thoughts on this?
I think this is a great point. I think it depends on the culture of the school, because, schools are different in size, in culture, in the enormity of the issue. And I've spoken to a ton of schools, and I don't have all the answers. I'm not a professional. But from what I've seen, I think that, not going to adults within the school, I'm sure can work, but I think sometimes bullying is really ingrained in the fabric of that grade or of that school. That's a really big problem. And tackling it and putting the onus on the young people, I think, can be an enormous responsibility, and changing the behavior of young people, especially if that behavior is not necessarily coming from the school, but coming from maybe their home, or from things that they're watching or looking at, or something they're dealing with in their life. I think it can be really hard, but not to say that doesn't work. Again, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not a professional, but I recommend, especially to people that are being bullied themselves, to talk to an adult, because of the mental health implications, and even physical bullying possibilities. I don't want to put that responsibility on the young person.
Okay, here's one. In thinking back about my school years, after listening to you speak, I realized I was both physically and mentally bullied. I was a new kid in the school. We moved around a bit with my dad's job. It was so painful. I wanted to ask now if bullying included somehow, I wanted to ask now if bullying is included somehow in school curriculum. I think your words and experiences would be so helpful to introduce into school curriculum as elementary school years. Hey, I agree with this one. So
thank you. And I'm really, really sorry that you went through that experience, and that you are recognizing it now. That's a lot. I think that bullying is included in curriculums in schools in some cases, and definitely not all. I think luckily it's talked about more now. I do a ton of speaking at schools, and if you have a school that you work with or go to, or have friends or family at, I send them my information. I am happy to speak to any schools. I love it. I speak to schools and public libraries and all sorts of places. And my book is in a lot of curriculums in different schools, which is great. But it's just a beginning. There's so many aspects and professionals needed in these schools as well. I think that we are definitely moving in a direction that is where it is more normalized to talk about these things, and that's amazing. But it's, again, just the beginning. And the other thing about bullying that makes it so tricky is that it rapidly evolves. And with every social media platform, it even changes slightly. And so from Instagram to TikTok, the bullying looks different. And if anyone here is on TikTok, I'm sure you can see that, and there's just so many layers to it. So it definitely is something that needs to be talked about more. I think since I was in school, there have been more changes, which is amazing, but there's still a ways to go.
Okay. As a parent, what's the best way I can support my kids, whether they are being bullied or have treated someone unkindly?
I think that the best way is to have open conversations on either side. So one thing I would caution people about is when I was younger, when I told my mom and she told the school, they decided that the best solution was to put me in a room with the person bullying me and that we couldn't leave the room until we figured it out. And that made things so much worse. It didn't solve anything. And when we did leave the room and joined the class again, it made me an even bigger target. So I think the number one thing I like to tell adults and parents is that creating that safe bond and relationship with your child is super important, to be able to have these open conversations and to assure them that, if they do open up to you and if they are vulnerable to you, you will help them create a plan where you can advocate together for them. And I think that this trust and this feeling of control on the young person's side is really important, because when you're going through bullying, everything is out of your control. You have no control. And so to know that you can be vulnerable, you can talk about whether it's your mental health or what's going on in school or whatever it is, you still are in some sort of control where you can make decisions with your parent or your guardian. I think that is really, really important. And then on the side of things, in terms of if someone is bullying or displaying bullying behavior, I think that there's a few layers to that. One, being cautious and being and observing the way that your child speaks to their friends or online on social media or to their siblings or around the house, because I think sometimes that language that may be going on in school can spill over to outside of school. It's very normal and natural for that to happen. So I think and then saying something if you hear that, and if you're like, "Ooh, that is not how I want my kid to be talking to other people," and having conversations that are, again, not super confrontational and overwhelming and scary, but just like, hey, this is why that language might not be so great and might hurt someone. What are some other ways that you can say the same thing? But I also think the biggest thing is to lead by example, which I know, is, I'm sure, very challenging. I'm not a parent, and so I am definitely not an expert in this area, but I do believe that a lot of the times the way that bullying escalates and grows is because of what that young person sees within their house or with friends or online. And so I think also having conversations around the type of media they watch, the type of TikToks they like, all of that is really important, because a lot of things can be normalized in a really negative way online. And so working through that, I think, is really helpful.
All right, here's a question from Victoria. I don't really get bullied, but sometimes I feel like I'm getting bullied when I'm just getting teased, but I take it very personally. So do you have ways to not take it personally?
I guess to your question, I would ask you, who are you being teased by and what about? So you say it's not bullying, but, because teasing can be a form of bullying. And if it's repetitious and if it's continuously hurting you, and if you don't want to call it bullying, then maybe it's just not great teasing or not jokes that you find particularly funny for whatever reason, whether it's an insecurity you have or something like that, I would encourage you, if they're your friends, to just talk to them. Talk to them separately or in a group and just say, I know you don't really mean anything by it, but that kind of bothers me. Can we maybe not talk about that or not joke about that? So I would encourage you to do that. Because you can't always control what people say about you or what they do, but with your friends you can tell them, you can communicate more than you can with other people. So if something is continuously bothering you and you don't want to label it bullying, that's totally fine. But I would really pay attention to who's doing it, what they're saying, why it bothers you, and how you can go about telling them that it bothers you.
This is Aija's book, The Survival Guide to Bullying. It is available on Amazon.com, which is where I got this. Do you have a link on your website or anything? Or
I do. On my website, you can go to AijaMayrock.com, and there's a link for both The Survival Guide to Bullying and for Dear Girl.
I don't have Dear Girl yet, but I'm going to get it. But I'll tell you something. I read this. It's really wonderful. And if I had this when they were being so mean to me when I was in 7th grade, oh my God, this would have helped me so much.
Thank you.
It's hard out there, guys. It really is. It's hard growing up.
Yeah.
So anyways, I suggest everyone write this down, go to Aija's website.
Yes.
Or Amazon. What's next for you? I feel like it would be cool if you talk to schools about curriculum. Yeah, we talked.
Thank you. I think that would be cool too. So I do a bunch of stuff. So I continue to write books. So my second book came out in September, Dear Girl, and that was really fun because it was my first book of poetry and it was about a different subject matter, all different things that people go through as they grow up, but it's specifically geared, towards girls and women. And so I do that. I do a lot of speaking, even virtually now. I work with brands on campaigns, tying my poetry into their work. I constantly create and post new poetry and video content on my social media. So if you check out my social media, which is just my name, Aija Mayrock, on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, I'm there. And I am continuing to write. My dream is to write for film and TV, so I've been writing some scripts and just seeing where it takes me. But I do speak at schools all the time. I'm actually speaking at a school this week, virtually, of course. But I love that, and it's a big part of what I do. Okay, this one it's actually from a longer piece, but I only included one page of it in my book, and it's about letting go. If you want to fly, you must let go of all that weighs you down. You are nowhere near the end of your story. Your story has just begun to write itself. Let go of perfection. It doesn't exist. Let go of your demons. They are not welcome here. Let go of your trauma. You can live with it, but you need not live in it. Let go of wanting to go back. There is no going back. There is only going forward. And forward is more extraordinary than you could ever imagine. There is even something beyond the horizon.